investigations are working, that we're getting evidence that is actionable, and that we feel like we've pursued the right course. No information that was given out over the course of those briefings compromises that in any way, and we don't feel that we've given any information that will harm our ability to get some more. Nope, we're just going to keep moving. Chip?
Well, I'm a little confused then. If the investigation was not compromised in any way by what came out last night, why didn't it come out a long time ago? Why wait?
Well,
I mean, presumably the reason for keeping this stuff secret was
sure,
because it could harm the investigation.
Sure.
How it comes out, and you say it didn't harm the investigation.
Well, as you know, because it was said last night, ideally this information would not necessarily come out.
Well, why if it doesn't harm the investigation?
In order for the American people to know that we are doing everything possible to keep them safe, and in order for our continued success in this effort, we made the determination that it was a good idea to make sure that people knew that our sources and that our methods here were working.
Wouldn't you want to share with the American people the maximum amount of information possible, so long as it doesn't hurt the investigation?
Well, obviously this president has put a premium on transparency and making sure that people know what's happening in this White House, why he's making the decisions that he's making. And I would say that what happened last night falls under the rubric of making sure that people know why he's making decisions that he's making and the success of those decisions.
Why wasn't that done a week or 2 or 3 before that?
Well, I think that if you could look, you could pick apart any little piece of this process, but if you go back all the way to December 25th of last year when this all started, we feel like day by day, moment by moment, we've been successful in getting the information that we needed and telling the American people exactly what's going on.
On the AIG bonuses, is the president completely helpless to do anything about this?
No, I wouldn't say he's helpless. What he's done is, well, for starters, on the AIG bonuses specifically, there has been success in getting some of those employees to voluntarily not take some of those bonuses to the tune of $20 million, which is no small feat. Secondly, I would say that he thinks that going forward we need to do more things to get these bonuses under control. That's why he's for and promoting say-on-pay legislation. That's why he's for getting some of this through financial reform. So no, I would not say that he's helpless. I would say that he's doing everything that he can in order to get this under control.
But in the past, when this has happened, he has come out and voiced his outrage. He's not doing it now. Well, is he just saying, well, I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to go out and voice the outrage I've voiced before? It's a marked difference. That,
well, Chip, I think you should keep in mind that your network and other folks in here have all reported on these bonuses before. For, the president to go out and holler at the top of his lungs just because there's old information that's being reported again. And in fact, the only new information that's being reported is actually good news. I don't think it necessarily makes sense for the president every single time to go out and say, here's what I'm thinking. The president is focused on creating jobs in this country. He's focused on getting our economy back on track. Speaking to every question every single day doesn't necessarily put our country on the path to where we need to be in the long term.
News today, why not be out there?
You may have noticed from this White House that we don't necessarily just jump on every single thing that runs on the front page of newspapers. Jake?
Any significance to your being here? Should we read anything into this?
You shouldn't read a thing into it other than Gibbs had a couple things to do.
Did Admiral Blair... What?
Gibbs had what?
Gibbs had a couple things to do.
It's not an audition.
Will you get a bonus?
No, unfortunately, as you may know, that there's a salary freeze in place here.
Were Admiral Blair and FBI Director Mueller not supposed to say in the hearing yesterday that Abdul Muttalib was still talking? Was that inadvertent, sharing that information?
You would have to ask them about what was inadvertent and not inadvertent. We feel like we've done a good job at sharing with the American people what we're doing to keep them safe, and we're going to continue to do that.
My impression is that the reason that the briefing happened last night was because this information was starting to get out there, so the administration wanted to share the story to correct the record, but also because the information had already been disclosed that he was cooperating again. And my impression is that Blair and Mueller were the ones who let that information be known, unless there's some other story. I don't know.
Well, as I said, there's a lot of information that's getting out there from all corners. There was an importance in contextualizing some of that information that was out there from the White House. But I don't agree with your characterization of their testimony, but we do feel like we did a good job of letting folks know exactly what we're up to.
I don't think I characterized it. I don't think I just asked if they...
Similar characterization.
Is that right? Well, the other question I have has to do with a statement President Obama made last week when he was speaking to the Republican retreat, the House Republican Conference. He said, he was referring to the stray cats and dogs in the healthcare legislation, and he said, as examples, he said, quote, "We said from the start it was going to be important for us to be consistent in saying to people, you want to keep the health insurance you got, you can keep it, that you're not going to have anybody getting in between you and your doctor and your decision making. And I think that some of the provisions that got snuck in might have violated that pledge." And he said that you guys were in the process of eliminating those provisions. What are those provisions?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you. Chuck?
A couple questions. First, when you say he called the winners of the Illinois primary, it means, I assume, the Senate race. He isn't, not the governor's race or anything.
He called Gianoulis and Quinn.
He called, and not Mark Kirk? Should we assume he called
No,
Mark
he did
Kirk
not call
too?
Mark Kirk. I think there's other calls on the schedule, but he does not call Mark.
I got you. Going back to some of the facts that came out on last night's briefing, what do you say to the criticism that says, okay, you guys started to get information from him after January 17th, sometime last week, but there's obviously was a 4-week gap where you got no information from him. And so the argument is you didn't use every tool in the arsenal that you had to get information. And I guess there still hasn't been a clear sort of response from you guys as to why you didn't use every tool you could have used, even in that, say, 24-hour period before he was Mirandized.
I'm not sure what you mean by not using every tool.
Getting other interrogators into the room that weren't the FBI, inviting the other members of the intelligence community.
Well, I would say that the president put his trust very much in the professionals who have been tracking down and fighting Al-Qaeda for the last 10 years. And it was their determination that this course of action would be the best one to extract the most amount of information. And what we've seen over the course of these past weeks is that that determination was correct, and that we have gotten quite a bit of usable information that has helped across the intelligence community to keep the American people safe. So I think it's easy to sort of armchair quarterback this thing and say, you could have done this, you could have done that, why didn't you do this? What we know is that because of what we did, we were successful. And so the president is pleased with the results.
But the criticism, forget the politics of this a minute, one of the criticisms is, okay, but there's a 4-week gap, and obviously time is of the essence on all of these.
Sure.
On all of this information. So how do you know you wouldn't have gotten this information sooner had you brought in another interrogator?
Well, how do you know anything could have happened in the
But you
past
didn't
differently?
try.
But what
I
we do
understand
know,
that, but
right?
you didn't use that other interrogator. So
What we do know is that the way that we did this, step by step, methodically working to get every piece of information that we possibly could, that we were able to do it. Now, there is criticism out there from folks on Capitol Hill and not on Capitol Hill who say that we could have done this differently. The president's view is that given the choice between politicians in Washington and the men and women who have been fighting this battle for the last 10 years against Al-Qaeda, he's going to talk to those folks who've been fighting Al-Qaeda. And I think that the results speak for themselves.
Is there any indication though that, are you saying this is always going to be the way that you handle this, or could there be a next time where maybe before you Mirandize you would bring in the other members of the intelligence community? I mean, you would
Let's just talk about this issue of Mirandizing for a second, because a lot of you probably saw the email that Robert Gibbs sent out. And in it explains the FBI's current policy as it relates to Miranda. And in its Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide, it says clearly, within the United States, Miranda warnings are required to be given prior to custodial interviews. Now, this is the standard by which the FBI has has Mirandized suspects over the course of the last years.
But even the FBI had made the determination not to Mirandize him immediately because it was determined that there might be an immediate threat.
Right. In consultation with the folks who were right there on the ground, with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Detroit, with folks here in Washington, D.C., they conducted this in the way that they thought was best in order to Mirandize him. So they did ultimately Mirandize him. And the notion that, going forward, we've made a wide variety of changes on how we would conduct this investigation or how we would conduct this interrogation, I think that's premature. I mean, this president does think that after any event, you should go back and see if there's ways that you can do things better or differently. But I think we're a little premature at this point. But I would just say that it has been successful. The way that we conducted this investigation, the information that we've been able to get, has been of great help.
Can you quickly tell us why Tim Shriver is meeting with Ronald Manning?
I believe it's to talk about issues of mutual concern, and a little bit about the incident that happened in August that was reported previously.
What is